that person looks scary, Peter Dutton being, a scary guy, which is just pathetic because we're not voting for, Mr. Popular.
That's exactly right.
I mean, this might be a bit of a strong point to make, but I think it's an indictment on the Australian people that we're like that we don't actually necessarily think really long and hard about substance and policy. Who cares what Peter Dutton looks like or Anthony Albanese or whoever? At some point, this is really going to affect your lifestyle, and it'll be incremental, and that's the danger, is it's incremental.
Correct. So you don't notice it straight away?
You don't notice it.
I love listening to this conversation because I grew up a Labor supporter.
We're a country of contradiction. We are a country of hypocrisy when it comes to that system, because what the governments have done well is to play the me versus you.
Welcome to the Mastering Podcast. We're joined by two powerhouses who have had the privilege of knowing for more than 10 years here in Brisbane, Michael Johnson and Philip DeBella. I'm super pumped about this episode, guys. I can't wait to dive into it, and thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having us. You might not be pumped by the time we're finished, but
yeah, mate.
So just a bit of background. Michael Johnson is a barrister, former member of Parliament in Australia, and the founder of the most elite networking group here in Brisbane or Southeast Queensland or even Australia. Australia, East Coast Forum. Philip DeBella is one of the most Australian successful entrepreneurs, scaling and exiting a premium coffee brand, DeBella Coffee, and now has built an incredible coffee community where we are actually recording here today, the Coffee Commune, and also part of Queensland's Small Business Roundtable. And I love Philip DeBella's posts on all things politics in the last month. It's been epic. I'm also joined by Don Senker, co-host of the Mastering Podcast. He's a masters athlete, entrepreneur, advisor, investor, and an absolute powerhouse in the education sector. So today, we're going to explore all things mastering politics. So what's really going on in the US, how it's affecting globally and here in Australia, key issues shaping Australia's upcoming federal election, and the intersection of business, policy and leadership in today's business uncertain times. Let's get into it, guys. Looking forward to it.
Fabulous. Thanks, Lucas, for having me. And I've got to say, fanboy, mate, one of my heroes.
Cut it out, Michael. It's good to catch up.
If you ever want an example of imposter syndrome, that's exactly what I'm feeling right now. So...
Now fire away, boys. Come on, let's get the show on the road.
Time is money, when you're a barrister.
6 minutes. Every 6 minutes. Our barristers don't charge in 6 minutes.
No, we do 1 minute. 1 minute.
I'd love to just kick off with yourself, Phil. What are you seeing both in your industry today, the ecosystem you're a part of, and what's happening here in Australia?
Look, it's a big question. I'll give you a snapshot. So we obviously got 1,600 members here at the Coffee Commune, but I do business globally all over the world, from importing coffee, obviously South America, Central America, and all the rest of it. What we're seeing with the States is, and this is my view, and my background is strategy, branding, marketing. So what I share is what I see, and I articulate it from my words and my point of view. Firstly, the intention is good, right? So forget it's Trump. President Trump, it could be let's call it President X, comes in and...
Probably can't say President X.
Well, probably can't say that because of Elon Musk, right? Well, let's just call it the president, right?
Pretty sure that's what he's going for.
Yeah, probably. So anyway, let's rephrase that one. The president comes in and the intention, I think, is good. Let's look after Americans first, right? There's because I'd be doing the same thing if I was coming into Australian politics. Let's look after Australians first, and then we look after somewhere else. And I talk in analogies, being a strategic marketer. It's no different to how we run our households. I'm going to look after my wife and my 2 kids first, and then I'm going to do my bit for community. So let's say the intention's good in the States and some of the execution is going to be questionable and poor. In terms of what we're seeing in our industry specifically, you got to remember that, we export a lot of stuff. We export a few things. So those industries really rely on countries like America that buy our products. Like the beef industry is a big one, the steel industry, but we're a country of imports. So if you said, is it diabolical what's happening in the States in terms of tariffs? Well, no, it's not diabolical because we're an import nation. What's diabolical that's happening that I predicted 8 to 10 months ago and people thought I was mad, that does impact us in Australia, and most people won't even realise this, is that dollar dropped under 60 cents for the first time this week,
yeah.
And it's sitting at 60 cents now. And that means that every time it drops down 1 cent, that's 1% more. So if our dollar was trading at 70 cents and earlier in the year at 65 cents, we have now 5% cost more to import. So that is the impact that Australians should be looking at. And of course, those that have got the vested interest going over to America, like your beef and your steel and wines and all that, of course they're going to be worried because that's going to affect them heavily. But as a country that imports, I'm more concerned about the US dollar. And in terms of tariffs, something the Australians don't think about, a tariff is no different. And I'd love Michael's opinion on this because he's been in and around politics. The tariff attacks, they're all the same thing. And if you look at the tariffs / taxes that we've got in Australia, and Bundaberg rum, I found out the other day, Bundaberg rum, Queensland product, Queensland company, 67% tax on it for Australians to buy something that's made here.
Is that a direct result of?
That's a direct, right, cost.
Okay.
I'd be looking at the tariffs and the taxes that we put on our own people within our own country before I'd be freaking them out and getting involved in what's happening in America.
As much as you said that, it's a good agenda, is nationalism or patriotism, that agenda, is it relevant in today's world in a globalized economy? Because it can't be, right? Like you're saying, we look after our own people. Is that possible?
But you got to come back to what I said, Don. Primary first, right? I first look after my own people, and then I go out and look after others.
Sword, right? Like
no, not at all. Not at all. It's no different to running a household. I look after me, my wife, and my kids before I go and, I've got to put food on my table before I can feed the next door neighbour. I've got to be able to pay my electricity bill before I pay the next door neighbour's electricity bill.
But when you've been relying on other people for so long, how do you turn that around without hurting?
People are going to hurt regardless. If he doesn't do that, people are hurting. But I'd love to hear Michael's opinion on it.
Yeah, Phil, I largely agree with Phil. My big thing, Lucas, Don, is the question of how do we land here in the first place? So if you look at the US system, the manufacturing base is shot to pieces. There's a hollowing out of middle America. The elite do it well. If you're a US banker, in New York, you're doing great. If you're a lobbyist in DC, you're doing great. But if you look at the farmer, if you look at the middle America, the guys in Ohio, all those big central states, they're like shot to pieces. So Trump's their savior. And what's the problem? The problem has been cheap stuff going into the US. So Trump's really kind of reacting to that problem and saying to middle America and the world, you just can't take advantage of our people, and especially our sensitive people, our vulnerable people. Yeah, go for your life against the bankers and the lawyers and all the academics that, in Boston that do well. But if you're an average American, living in middle America, you're kind of a bit of a victim of how China has really taken advantage of the US over the last decade plus, even 2 decades, with cheaper products. And anyone that understands economics, and Phil will know this better than most, is that, if you're a developing economy, your big advantage is your labour cost. Once you start to go up the food chain, the biggest cost is labour. I mean, look at Australia, right? Would you agree, Phil?
100%.
I mean, what do they say? Like 60% of a business is labour cost. It's not the actual products. It's not the manufacturing piece. It's not the actual items. It's the cost of paying Freddie or, Bill for your skills. And, we don't, in Australia, we don't want to dumb down and go down that Southeast Asian, Vietnam, Cambodia, Myanmar kind of route. But we've got to be careful that we don't have an economy or an economic system where our labour prices itself out of being competitive.
Totally agree.
And the central point is productivity. Productivity. And I don't want to be too political maybe, but, a big factor in the cost of our labour, in our manufacturing and in our economy is, God bless their souls, the union movement. They're really go to construction. Why do we have no houses? Is because to build a house, I'm putting 60% on for the cost of a labour employee, a union guy.
Yeah.
It's
and they would say it for safety, right?
Well, hospitality. I mean, Michael's made 2 great points for people to understand, because everyone indulges in hospitality in a cafe, restaurant of anyone. There's not one person in this country that wouldn't. America, to give you an example on the back of Michael as an example, Trump's come out and said, and forget against Trump, I shouldn't say, because people hear the word Trump and go into shakes, right? The president has come out and said, no, I'm not charging hospitality workers on their tips anymore, right? So he's giving something back. So if we look at, and that's why I come back to the intention. Yeah. The intention is to collect more money for Americans so I can give Americans more money. And he's proven that already, because one of the first announcements he did in the hospitality sector was say, you're not going to pay tax on your tips. And of course, that middle to lower end that you're talking about, that's what he's trying to lift. Now, when you bring it back to Australia, the cafe industry, which most people don't know, the cafe industry pre-COVID was running 35% wages, right? If you were doing 30, 35% wages, you could make some money. Cafes and restaurants are now running 45 to 55% labour, right? And that is why they've had margin decrease, and that's why most of them are going broke. Last year, 1 in 10 cafes closed, and I tell you, they didn't close because their revenue was down. They closed because their expenses were up. So Michael makes some really, really good points there. We want to be paying everybody well, and that's why I never talk about what the pay rate is, because it's irrelevant. It's the percentage of your sales. You can't, in our industry, run a business with 45 or 55% labour cost, because that's why you're going to be paying $30 for bacon and eggs and $7 for a coffee.
So in hospitality, it's up to...
They're running 45% on average. The good ones are just under the 40 at 39 and 40. You know, and that is the point, because you've got to understand the breakdown.
And we always wonder as a general society or public is like, why are cost of living increasing so much? Because they have no choice. As soon as costs go up and say in a cafe or a restaurant, they've got to charge that extra, and then people stop going out.
Spot on, Lucas. I mean, what most people who either have not invested in a business, who have not owned a business, who have not run a business, what they don't understand is that I will just pass the cost on. Yeah. I mean, I chaired an elevator company, Orbit's Elevators, great company. We sold it to a global company, Kone from Finland, last year. Every time we had a problem, there was a cost factor imposed on us by an external factor, shall I say, we just passed the cost on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So guess what? Elevators didn't become more expensive.
Yeah. It's the chicken and the egg, isn't it?
So then if you're the construction
most
company,
people don't run businesses.
if you're the ARIA or the McNabs that are putting in an elevator, what are you going to do? You're going to pass that cost on to the buyer. And so he's paying an extra 10%.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so it's just a vicious circle.
So Michael, you said, how did we get here? You said that, right? Like is it the narrative? Because in America, it's always been about a race issue, but it sounds like it's not a race issue. It's a class issue. Right.
Where? We're talking about Australia or America?
Well,
I think it's an economic issue. So for example, my wife, you guys know my wife. She's an amazing woman, amazing human being, Vietnamese heritage, moved to the US, kind of in that bracket of, Democrats, and they're just like swapped. They don't vote Democrats anymore, because they're the kind of people that have been taken for granted. And my message to any aspiring political person, candidate, party, Liberal leader, Labor leader, Greens, don't take your people for granted. Don't take me for granted.
Yeah.
I want quality. I want my leader, I want my Prime Minister to be the best they can be. And the Democrats in America took the kind of migrant families like my wife's family for granted, and they said enough is enough. And I nearly fell off my chair when they said they were going to vote for Trump, Trump version 1, and they're now Republicans.
And you said, is it America or Australia? Yeah. That's why I asked. We got to learn from the...
Well, what you saw at the last election, which I'm predicting won't happen at the next election in a couple of weeks' time, what we saw was a bit of a revolt. Yeah. That's why you saw the independents, and you saw what they call the teals, and because I'm actually a fan of independents if they're running for the right reasons and all the rest of it, because they don't have to lie. But when you've got the teals funded by people with hidden agendas and all sorts of stuff,
well, they weren't truly independent or truly. That's right. That was sort of.
So what you end up happening? So to me, the revolt was last election. So whatever happened in with America this time, that was for us at the last election. Yeah. I think this election in Australia, you're going to see a lot less of the Greens, because a lot of them got in but haven't been doing anything. And I can talk from experience from that, because we lost a great, we had Trevor Evans in our region at New Farm. He got 30% of the primary vote, but the person who came fourth technically, which was, I couldn't even remember his name till the other day, Stephen Bates, is the leader. All of a sudden, he's representing our region, but he didn't. I think he came third or fourth on the ballot, first past the post. Now, there's a couple of things in that, right?
Phil,
I did. So he was the least popular of all.
I haven't seen.
And then he gets up.
But for 3 years, I haven't seen.
Like for an average person, that doesn't add up. Can you give us a little bit of a overview?
But let me finish this one. I haven't seen Stephen Bates, and I'm very active in my community.
Yeah,
I have not seen him in New Farm, and I'm part of the New Farm. They've got a chat page that's New Farm Tenerife and surrounding Newstead. I have not seen him put a message or anything up until a couple of weeks ago. He put up that he's running a free barbecue for the constituents. So, and I'm not bagging because that's not my style, right? Whereas when Trevor was in, Trevor was accessible to everybody. You'd see him on the side. He had an open door policy at his office, all that sort of stuff. So, I mean, that's the political system.
Well, the Democratic vote showed that he was out there.
So. Well, it's not democracy, right? Because democracy is I have a say and I have a go, and if I win, I get elected. Well,
so explain to us, how does someone who's 30 meters ahead as he said, I think.
Well, I'll give you the commercial raw, and then Michael can tell you the technical because he's been in politics. But in short, the way the political system works, and it's a good question. I'll make 2 points. At state and federal level, you don't vote for the leader. So you don't vote for so let's say in Queensland, unless you were down in Broadwater, down in David Crisafulli's seat, nobody voted for David Crisafulli, but they did. So they elected their representative in their region based on whether they wanted David Crisafulli or whether they wanted, Stephen Miles. That's not democracy because my local member could be terrible, but I want David Crisafulli, or vice versa. My local member could be amazing, and David Crisafulli is not the person I want to vote for. So that's not democracy, part one. Part two is, and it used to be first past the post, and they switched it to preferences, compulsory preferential, which means that you have to number them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So you go to the election ballot, and I only know, say, 2 or 3. I knew 3. I didn't know the other 3 or 4 that were on that ballot, but all of them get, and there's a great YouTube video, I can't remember who did it, but he showed it in examples of marbles.
Yeah.
To show exactly how technical the system is. And Michael might know a lot more about it than I do. But in short, even the 7th person on that ballot can then choose who he gives his votes to. And then the 6th person chooses who they give the votes to. And then the 5th person chooses to get the votes. And so what we ended up with is, I think, and don't quote me on this, I'm not sure if Stephen came 3rd or 4th, first part on the primary vote, but he ends up winning the running race. Now, think of this. We all take off, all 4 of us, for a 100-metre sprint. I'm guaranteed to come last, right? I come 4th, but, and Michael comes first, but you two gang up with me and we knock Michael off the seat. Michael doesn't get his gold cup ribbon check. No, Michael, from first, you've been relegated because the 3 of us have pooled our stuff together and knocked you off the perch. They're the 2 points. We are not a democracy, and that's where I say the system's broken. And I'm a big fan of the Brisbane City Council system, which is the same as the Gold Coast. Love them or hate them, whatever side of politics, whatever gender they are, you get 2 votes. You vote for your local person who's got to work hard, or you don't vote for them, and you vote for the mayor, he or she, of any party, or they don't get your vote. And history will tell you, and I'm turned 50 this year, so I can only remember as far back as Sally Ann Atkinson. But we've had Labor, we've had Liberal, we've had male, we've had female, and Brisbane has always progressed. No matter who's in government and who's in power, it's always progressed. Whereas what we've had at state and
voting
federal,
for that direct candidate that you want.
Correct. And that's a system I want to see.
How did you get away from the popular system to a preferential system?
Michael's the best one to ask about that one.
Through legislation. I mean, it's just a statute of Parliament. Peter Beattie changed it when it was not to his advantage. He's gone back and forth, and right now, generally the Labor Party thinks the preferential is best, which forced, if you remember, Phil, the Liberal Party and the National Party to merge to become one party.
Yes. Yeah.
So now you don't actually vote in Queensland for a Liberal Party or a National Party. You just vote for one of them.
They're one party.
That's what I was going to ask. Is that
so that's
what
changed
made
the system.
The Liberal and Nationals come together?
It's just a vote of the Parliament. But Phil, I want to make the point in my seat. You make a great point there. In my old federal seat of Ryan, there was a Liberal Party candidate incumbent who lost his seat, and it's now represented by a Greens MP.
Yeah.
And she was not the preferred candidate by country mile of the electorate. What happened is that the preferences of all the others, Labor and all the other candidates, gave it to her, so she beat the Liberal guy.
Yeah.
So that's a preferential system.
So how do we fix it? You've been in politics for a really long time. You've been in.
You're asking general public to fix it, or you're asking a?
No, I'm asking another politician.
Mate, that's above my pay grade. I'm just a taxpayer, humble taxpayer, and observer of politics. But
I'd call you a career politician, but
he's not a career politician.
That's why I was unsuccessful. I went in to make a change and then get out. But
I use Michael as an example when people ask me why I don't want to be a politician. I said, well, look at Michael, right? Smart, knows his stuff, there for the right reasons, pushing the right agenda, and the system was no good for him. Can you imagine me? I'm not as politically correct as Michael. I would be arrested in the first week.
What's wrong with that? Can I ask? What's your intention? You've been very vocal, right?
Yeah,
You've made some really good points on a lot of things, and even today you're making some good points. What's stopping you from running for?
So I'm selfish, and that is I take 20 weeks a year off.
Have you seen Donald Trump and Elon Musk?
I take 20 weeks a year off. I spent 23 years of owning businesses, working 100-hour weeks, 3 weeks a month traveling, not at home. My kids are 17 and 15 now. And when I exited Ballot in 2017, because I get asked that question a lot and I make it clear, I'm too selfish. I exited in 2017 and I said, I've got to lose 70 kilos, 70. Got to lose my weight is priority one. Priority two is I'm going to spend all of school holidays with my kids, because a scary stat is 90% of our time with our kids is spent before they're the age of 18. And that slapped me in the face. And that's the only reason I sold my company, because we're making plenty of money. And I got a good paycheck, but we're making plenty of money. But I was overweight. I wasn't seeing my family. Those same reasons are why I won't go into politics. Let's put what they do aside. Politicians have to be admired for the amount of hours that they need to do. Right? They do not get enough justice for that. I mean, you've been there, Michael. It's 24/7. And it's worse now with these phones, right? 15 years ago, 12 years ago, the media cycle was once a day, right? It's now instant, right? You weren't contactable after hours and all the rest of it. You weren't expected. Today, politicians 24/7, and not just today, it's been like that for a while. They've got to be accessible. They've got to go to things. The only time they get a time off is when they have holidays. And then if something happens when they're on holidays, we've seen in the past what happens. It is not the ideal lifestyle for people. And as I'll give you the short version, I'm too selfish. So I'd rather sit on the outside, and I do a lot of advising at all levels, but I make sure they're non-paid positions. So then I'm not paid, because then it's not convoluted. And I'm willing to work with any side of government that wishes to show up. And I say that to people all the time. I'll work with any side of government that shows up. And recently I've caught up with One Nation representatives. I've caught up with Jackie Lammy's Senator Angela up here. I've caught up with Clive Palmer's right-hand guy. I'm not good with names, I can't remember. I've caught up with everybody except no one from the Labor government showed up. No one. Now,
and you've actively reached out to get them to show up.
Well, we have to, because Phil DeBella, me...
You're only interested in good policy. Doesn't matter who the messenger
strategy
is.
and policy.
Because it affects your 1,600 members, right?
But they also got to understand that the coffee commune is separate to me. I'm entitled. I'm a separate entity. I'm entitled to have my own opinion, just like my workers are here. My workers are allowed to have any opinion about anything they want. They've just got to be respectful to each other and to anybody that visits. Because we've had a lot of politicians here. The coffee commune is completely got to be across everything. It's even more interested in great policy.
Tell us a bit about Coffee Commune and what you do.
So we're doing a lot of advocacy stuff, and we work with local, state, and federal government.
Yeah.
We hold regular roundtables. Like quarterly, we bring industry roundtables together. The last one we did was the IR-HR. So we brought together experts in IR and HR around the table, and we said, what are the bottlenecks? What are the red flags? But what are the solutions? We flushed it out. It was a month's worth of work. We flushed it out. We built a paper, and we gave it straight to the Labor government, and we gave it to the Liberal government. We've given it to all of the governments. They've got access to it. We've heard nothing from the Labor government. The Liberal government, straight away, Peter Dutton reached out and said, Philip, I want to catch up with you, and I want to bring Susan Ley and Michaela Cash with me. Doors open, right? Tell my membership manager, reach out to the Labor government. Let the Labor government know that we're happy to have a meeting with them as well. I don't think we've even got a reply from them, to be honest. So I sat in the office with the three of them, Susan Ley, Michaela Cash, and Peter Dutton, and we went through the IR and HR, and I said, there's been 27 plus new laws come in the last 3 months. Most of them are aimed at the top 5% or top 1%, like your BHPs and all that. But you're crucifying all of the micro, small, and medium businesses with your policy. This needs to stop. And here is the paper. And we gave it to them. And we said, have a look at this and have a look at the solution. And they went, right. We got word a couple of weeks ago that, and it's now become public, that if they get in, there is no new IR-HR laws coming into play for small and medium businesses, because if anything, they're going to be looking at reforming them.
Yeah.
Well, they said, so that's what the commune does in a real life example.
So you're a membership group and a lobbyist group.
No, not lobbyists, because we don't pay anyone.
That's what I was going to So non-government funded.
Non-government funded, completely independent. We don't take government contracts, so we don't have to register as lobby groups.
That's what I wanted to
clarify for the listeners, of course. Yeah. But we do it at council. Our council's amazing here, right? Because we've had an impact on, when the floods were on, you saw that Adrian Trina said, right, no, you got to get your cars out of underground car park. So there's no parking fees, right? When there was COVID, Adrian rang me, what can we do for your industry? And I said, mate, get rid of all the footpath dining fees and all that, because no one can use it. So he froze outdoor dining, he froze water rates, he froze license fees. He did free parking meters. So we...
Do you think, just quickly, Phil, do you think it's because and then this is like both sides, but the Liberal Party understands that Australia is run by 80% of small businesses and Labor doesn't understand that?
Yeah, look, I think part of the problem, Lucas, is this, and Michael's, I'd love your
disconnect?
opinion. I think the problem is the moment you start with Labor or Liberal or Greens or Independents, and you'll find that I don't. I talk about the person and go, Adrian Schrinner, or I say Peter Dutton or Anthony Albanese, because the moment you trigger, and it's a psychological thing, you trigger a party, it evokes an emotion, right? And that's my area of expertise, being marketing and the rest of it. I don't want you to get emotional about the party. I want you to get really pragmatic about the strategy, right? So it's like when they attacked Anastasia Palaszczuk, and there was no secrets that me and her did not get along, but we never met. We just didn't get along in terms of she didn't believe in my ideologies, I didn't believe in hers. But when the media had a go at her being overseas in the US on a holiday or wherever she was in Europe, I was the first one that came out publicly and I said, everybody knows that we don't see eye to eye on policies, but nobody has the right. She is on technical holidays. She's planned those holidays. There is no crisis. Leave her alone. She's entitled to do what she wants. And that had far greater impact. But that wasn't me being political. That was me being who I am, honest. Good policy, give it the credit. Bad policy. Scott Morrison, and when he said, I'm giving everybody $750 a week, we were very vocal. That is the wrong strategy for hospitality, because the average hospitality worker at the time was earning $350 a week.
Clive Palmer doesn't need a $700 check.
That's it. And all of a sudden, you've just lifted the expectations, which we're going to pay for later, which is happening now. As Michael said, Phil believes in good policy. That's me. It's about the policy. It's not about... we have so many flaws in this country. We are a country of contradiction, and because otherwise I'll hog the mic, and that's not fair to Mike. But we are a country of contradiction, and I talk in facts, not in opinions, right? Data, and then analyze it. We tell people we want you to own your own house, and we want so they crucify you with stamp duty, right? So they tax you to own your own house, your first house. We want you to be aspirational and buy another property, right? So they hit you again with stamp duty, but then they hit you with land tax. Then they hit you with, if you sell that property and they hit you with capital gains tax.
Yep.
Right? And you go, hang on a minute. Well, how am I aspirational? If another one is employees, right? And one of the reasons we built the FBT policy with Peter Dutton was, well, why am I being penalised to look after my staff? There's all these IR laws saying you must look after your staff. You can't contact them, the right to disconnect. You put all these rules in place to protect the worker. I, as an employer, want to look after my worker. I want to give them a company car. I want to take them out for dinner. I want to give them a petrol voucher. I want to give them a food voucher. Yeah, you can, but you got to pay a tax on that. So therefore, you're going to penalise me to look after my staff. We're a country of contradiction. We are a country of hypocrisy when it comes to that system, because what the governments have done well is to play the me versus you, rather than everyone coming together as one Australian and saying, I do, and they go tax the rich. Oh, they made money, they can afford it. Percentage, 30% of 100,000 is less than 30% than 1 million, which is less than 30% of 100 million. So yes, the government only just needs to make sure that everybody's paying tax, and the person who's earning more is already contributing more to this country. We don't need the rhetoric and the stupidity of people saying charge more tax, or people that make more money should pay more tax. They already do. And if you are listening to this and you don't understand it, well, then sorry, I can't help you. 30% of 100 is a lot less than 30% of a million, that is less than, which is less than 30% of 100 million. So the more money somebody makes, and that's what Trump's trying to do in America. Make more money so you can contribute more to the country.
I think that's another whole different podcast, right? The education system. We don't teach people fiscal policy coming out of year 12 or at any point.
Well, it is another, but it's also...
But two quick points on that, Phil. Phil was spot on, but what he didn't say, and he's probably been too kind to say that, is that most people in government making those decisions, Phil, have never owned a business.
Correct.
Have never worked in a business. Correct. And don't really understand it.
Yeah.
And the second point is the reason why they're taxing, on your third house and stamp duty and all that is because we're actually spending, or governments are spending more than money coming in.
Correct.
So it just doesn't add up. I mean, it's really quite simple.
Yeah.
You've got to, the bucket is actually, contrary to what people think, the bucket does have a limit. It is not a big, giant, universal bucket. Yeah. And I think, what I'd say, the message I'd like to get out to anyone listening to this is, don't believe that the government has an infinite amount of money.
Correct.
Because you might not pay, the price for this, But goodness, if it's not your children, it's your grandchildren.
That's right. The money,
at
the
some
government
point-
collects money, right?
At some point, this is really going to affect your lifestyle, and it'll be incremental, and that's the danger.
Yep.
Is it's incremental.
Correct.
So you don't notice it straight away.
You don't notice it.
I love listening to this conversation because I grew up a Labor supporter. Because I grew up in Ipswich and my whole family in that.
That two-party system you said, it's like, traditionally I would have never looked at who the person was.
Yeah.
It was a two-party
I
system.
wish we could change that, Don. Phil, it's almost impossible to change.
Yeah,
but
it is.
That's got to be. I want to either vote for the lead of the party, the leader,
Yes.
I do
directly.
now, but most of
And
the
then I want to vote for your local
because I might have a great
representative.
local candidate, and I just love them to death, and they're full of great values, but I can't stand their party.
Yes.
And that's a disconnect.
It is. And that's not democracy. But you made, before, because you did ask questions, I just want to add on to something that listeners, because the good thing about this podcast, and that's why I agreed to be on it with Michael, and right, is to expose what the listeners don't know, right? Something they don't know is this. We just hired a new financial manager, right? A finance manager to sit under my COO, who's also my CFO. Now, that person has to be qualified. Right, so by law, they're going to be. They've got to be an accountant or CPA.
A red-haired.
They've got to be CPA, right? They've got to be a certified practice accounting to be in that role, to be able to sign off on documents, But you can be the treasurer of this state or the treasurer of the country, and you've never ever looked at a ledger or never ever studied accounting. So how can we put people into positions, on Michael's first point? How could you put people in the positions that don't know, because they're making important decisions but they don't know? You've got attorney generals in the past, and that's what Deb Franklinton is, a lawyer by trade, and she's the attorney general. But you've got attorney generals in the past that probably wouldn't even know how to spell the word law, right? We've got a small business minister federally who's never owned a small business. And therein hence is the systemic problem. If you're going to go into a finance role, you have to have a finance background. If you're going to go into a small business role, you need to have a small business background. If you're going to go into the attorney general, that is systemically wrong. And that is something they can change very easily.
It is changing in the US, right? Like, is that the problem though? We got bureaucrats running politics, and that's been the way in most Western countries.
No, it's actually the opposite. I'll give you some insights. At Brisbane City Council level, it's run, it's separated. The politician and the bureaucracy, right? The bureaucrats, meaning bureaucrats is not a negative word, but it's seen as a negative word.
Yeah.
Let's call it the engine room, right? Who has a CEO, and you have the Lord Mayor who has the councillors. The Lord Mayor and the councillors are renounceables. So you say, who's actually got the pull string and the power to make shit happen? Well, it starts from the idea comes from the Lord Mayor and the councillors, but the execution comes from the engine room. The CEO runs the books of city council. The CEO and the bureaucrats, so to speak, have more power to execute. At state and federal, it's the opposite. State and federal, the politician, the minister can say, this is what I want you to do. And the director general, who is, let's say, the engine room, will do that. Whereas you don't have that at local. And that's something that a lot of listeners wouldn't understand or get to. So, it's like, so it's great to meet. Well, I can meet with the chair of standards, which is looks after restaurants and hospitality licenses. But if I said to her, you need to look at the license model and you need to do this, she can put that idea forward, because it's Sarah Hutton. She can put that idea forward, but the bureaucrats are actually the ones that got the power to sign off on it. And if they don't, whereas if I did that at state or federal, the minister can go, this is to the department, this is what I want to happen. Now, which one is better? I don't know. Michael's been in the system, but that is just so the listeners understand the systemic difference of what happens at different levels of government.
That's what really I don't understand. The general public in the US voted for everything he said he's going to do.
They voted for change.
They voted for change. He's now doing change at a rapid rate, and they don't like it. It's like
I'm not so
what
sure
you
about
talk
that. Who is they? The protesters obviously don't like it, but they're
But the results are not there.
They're probably the ones that
he's going to bring the cost of eggs down. It hasn't happened, right? So the results are not there. He said he's going to do it on day one.
But he's only been there for 3 months.
But I'm with Michael. It depends what news you listen to, right? Like Australia, there's no doubt that Sky. I've never seen Sky News so biased, right? And I don't have a problem with it because they're talking truth. But the Labor Party's not all bad. Is in their policies. Let's talk specific. The budget. The budget is not all bad. It's just there's some real big problems with it. There's nothing for small business, right? It's really detrimental to small business. That's why I've been very vocal about the Liberal Party. The Liberal Party has stuff in there for small and medium business, which is the one I'm interested in. 9.9 million people in Australia are employed by a small, medium business, right? 9.9. I thought government was the biggest employer. They're not. They're under 3 million. Just under 3 million at local, state and federal, 3 million people of the workforce are government, and small, medium business is just under 10 million. And yet you've got a leader of the party that has nothing in play for that. That's the problem, right, for us. And that's why I'm vocal. But hey, the Labor government, like unions, not all unions are bad.
No,
unfortunately, there's one that's
our...
most powerful and is not ethical. But not all unions are bad. There's a place for unions.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep,
and that's what we've got to get around is Michael made the comment before. It's who are you listening to? And that was a great question. It got a bit overskipped. Who's telling the story? Because I heard the other day that and I don't follow the American politics very closely at all, but somebody else just told me there's a region apparently that's never voted, for the Trump side of politics, but now the whole state or whatever, the whole state is on board. Now that came from one source of media, and Fox is aligned with one of them, and the other one's aligned with somebody else. I don't even know.
But I think the thing is if you know that. Yeah. So when I read The Guardian, I know that its lens is shaped by its funders and its support base.
So I've got a question for you.
What
would you read? Oh, that's a question. What would you read? If you're Australian right now, what would you read?
If you're an Australian voter that wants to make up your mind,
well, I believe in unconscious bias. I definitely believe in that. But for me, I try to read most of them. So my reading hours are kind of
analysis.
Yeah, 5 to 6 a.m. and then I do a late
person.
night. I'm a big fan of Sky News, obviously. I used to be on it. And I give that plug. If they want me back, I'm happy for a fee.
Well, I'm the same. I like Sky
but
News.
I mean, the Fin Review, obviously being in business. I read the Courier Mail as another point for local stuff. But really, I just skip through a lot of it. I'm pretty rock solid in my views and philosophies. For me, it's just sort of tweaking it and getting another angle on an issue that I might not be sure about.
Well, this is one election where we're going in where there's no clear winner, right? We don't know. The next 4 weeks is going to be quite volatile on who's going to win, and it could be detrimental to the future of Australia.
Well, you do. But for me, and I'll present it another way, if we look at the data, nothing else. If you look at the facts and data, it's a no-brainer. And I'll explain it through an example. And this is one that I've put up on my LinkedIn. So if anyone does like what I like, I don't care if you don't like it, you can jump on my LinkedIn page anyway.
We'll make sure you
right?
Put a link.
But so this is the way I posed it the other day that just went viral. All right, something like 40,000 impressions or something. And I went, right, 3 years ago, I was hiring for a CEO. And I interviewed a range of people. The two last candidates came. One flipped and flopped and couldn't make a decision on anything. And that person's name was Scott Morrison. And the other one that turned up for the CEO role was Anthony Albanese. And he was very clear. These are the three things I'm going to do in the next 3 years. I'm going to lower the cost of living. I'm going to lower energy prices. And he gave numbers. And I'm going to build more houses. And he gave numbers. He made promises to me as the managing director. I was impressed. So I had Scott Morrison apply for my CEO role. He was flipping and flopping. Nice guy, but couldn't lead my team because didn't have any, it was all over the place. So I didn't choose Scott Morrison. I chose Anthony Albanese on his 3 clear policies, on his 3 benchmarks and all the rest of it. Now his contract's coming to an end.
You gave him a 3-year contract.
And I gave him a 3-year contract, and we're coming to the end. May 3rd is the end of the contract. So I'm now sitting down in front of him to talk about his performance. And I go, Anthony, thank you, firstly, for your contribution and everything you've done for the company. However, I will not be renewing your contract, and this is my personal view and how I would run my business. I'm not renewing your contract because you didn't deliver on the lower price of, energy. You didn't lower the cost of living, and you certainly didn't build any properties that you promised my organisation. So I will not be renewing your contract. And he turns around and he says, so who's replacing me? Well, I'm not sure yet, but there's 3 other candidates because everyone thinks it's just Peter Dutton. Now, it's likely to be, but there is other candidates, right?
But that's not reality, right?
Stay on this train of thought. There's 3 other candidates that I'm going to employ, but the decision I am certainly making as the managing director of my company is that you will not get another contract as the CEO because you didn't deliver. So I've made that decision. Thank you for your services. Here's your money and goodbye. Now I look at the alternative. And I go, right, let's interview the alternative. Now, what a smart, well, let's not say smart, use the word smart. Let's give him some kudos. A smart Anthony Albanese, after I've said to him I'm not renewing his contract because of X, Y, Z, says, I've got a window of opportunity to still get my job back if I make the other 3 candidates look stupid. So I'm now going to make the other 3 candidates look stupid. I'm going to bring up lies, and I'll tell you what in a minute. I'm going to bring up lies about Medicare, and back in 2008, he looked at me the wrong way, and that other candidate, touched a girl on the shoulder 10 years ago, and I'm going to bring up as much dirt as I can because you're not actually the one that chooses the CEO, your team is. But if I can show your team that they're grubs and I should be back in, then I've got a chance to keep my job. And that's exactly what's happening in politics. So my stance is if I wouldn't do it in a private business, public companies certainly wouldn't do it. You would be kicked out like there's no tomorrow. Why is it okay for the Australian public? And I'm going to tell, I said I'd come back to a point. Something else somebody doesn't know. That's another piece of nugget information that the public don't know. Michael knows this one. Politicians are indemnified from defamation. They're indemnified in marketing campaigns. So Anthony Albanese in the CEO analogy could say, Peter Dutton's likely to get my job. I'm going to tell Philip that Peter Dutton has done X, Y, Z. He was in jail. Even though Peter Dutton says, no, I haven't. I can prove I've never been in jail. Well, in the real world, you can sue Anthony Albanese for defamation. In the political world.
Can you imagine if the boss of BHP said that the boss of David Jones was in jail?
Hold on, what's the reason?
No, ask Michael. Well, Michael's been they're indemnified.
Man,
they're indemnified.
Yeah. What Phil is referring to is
why
kind
is
of
there
that,
no accountability for
is
that?
that implied free speech that the Constitution allows you to
Free-
say what you basically
free-
want.
Free speech.
There's probably only a couple of little areas you probably can't say that are criminal. That if you said, so and so did so and so. That'd be in trouble.
I did use an extreme example.
But really, it's implied free speech that you can say what you want and it's just up to the public to believe you or not.
Yeah. Look at David Crisafulli. He was asked 130 times, actually 132 times I think it was, he was asked about the abortion, right? And full-term abortions. Now, it doesn't matter what you believe in or don't believe, because I don't believe in full-term abortions. Obviously, a majority of people do, and that's okay. That's democracy. See how calm I am? That's democracy. I still don't believe in it, but that's democracy, and it got voted in and it passed. So David's strategy was simple. No, I personally don't believe in full-term abortions either, but it's not an issue and it's not going to be raised because the public have spoken. That's what they want.
It's a fascinating point.
130 times he got asked.
I mean, just go back to the former Victorian Premier who said we'll have a Commonwealth Games.
Yeah.
Everybody in Victoria thought they're having a Commonwealth Games and he changed his mind.
Correct.
We're not going to have it.
There's no, because they're indemnified. There's no recourse. There's no accountability.
It's a fascinating point.
Because you've been in the space for a long time, and this really, really, really ekes me. All I notice coming up to any political scenario is they're there to give shit on each other. They're not there, and this is both parties. You see it both ways, and other parties too. They're not saying, I'm going to come into power and I'm going to do whatever the 3 next points are, and I'm going to smash it. I'm going to here's my vision, here's my direction, this is how I'm going to do it. All I've been seeing online and in media and news, they're just giving shit on each other. Literally I had a pamphlet in my GPO box and I pulled the pamphlet out and I was like, what is this? And I should have bought it today. And it's literally just one of the parties giving shit to the other party around how terrible they are.
It never used to be the Australian way, right? This was something that was very synonymous in American politics, where it hasn't happened in Australian politics before. This is why I've been asking a lot about America, because we got to learn from it's.
Generally, it's said that the US is about 20 years kind of ahead of us. So things that are happening there now, we're kind of 15, 20 years down the track.
So at some point we're going to put tariffs on penguins. I'm kidding.
Be careful what you wish for. It all comes back down to pure research. So both political parties absolutely will tell you that if I have a crack at you, that really resonates.
Yeah.
The data shows that negative, hard-hitting
character
assassination on their rivals actually does make an impact.
As in generates votes.
It changes people's
It changes their emotion, their impression.
And especially the women. And the most powerful single force of voters are women. And so if you can change your wife's vote, your daughter's vote, the daughter will then say to dad or brother, we shouldn't really vote for Bill Smith because he seems pretty bad. then it does. Then the multiples of that across the country obviously have an impact.
I always
but
thought,
it does work.
I always thought it's because the American system doesn't force you to go and vote, right?
Well, neither does the Australian system. That's a misunderstanding. The Australian system, a lot of people don't understand this. So here's a new one. Here's a revelation, Lucas. So the Australian system does not force you to physically, legally put a mark on the ballot paper.
Correct.
Or 1, 2, 3.
Correct.
What it forces you to do is to rock up to the ballot box and have your name signed off.
Okay.
You can then walk away. So you don't actually vote. It's just a register to vote.
But they never release those numbers. They'll never release.
So, of course, by the time you're there, most people are then going to walk that extra 10 paces.
We've already
and
waited
vote.
2 hours in line. So
Exactly.
you might as well
do it.
But the actual legal obligation is not to vote, it's to register. To vote.
So what happens, because I know a lot of people in my networks who have never registered to vote in the first place.
Yep.
So then they never get a fine for not voting. So I don't know if there's any numbers or statistics around this, but that's still a option.
Oh, there'd be statistics somewhere as whether they want to share them.
They do. I mean, there is a fine. Generally, the Electoral Commission, it's sort of,
There's a fine issued, but it's very easy to waive the fine.
you can say something.
So back to my point before around just two parties, giving shit on each other.
Yeah.
Why are we seeing that? Why can't, for me as a voter, I want to know what party to vote for, what they're going to do for the country, what they're going to do for my inner.
Yeah, but Lucas, you're a thinking Australian. You probably care about this country to more so an extent than others might. Yeah. I'll share something that I think is quite interesting. When I was running for Parliament, and in the 10 years I was in Parliament, I lived, breathed, consumed politics, my work. Now that I've been out of it, I hardly have time to follow it. And I'm not the most busiest guy in the country, but I'm busy enough to worry about my son, keeping my wife happy, all the boards I'm involved with, my side hustles, my downtime.
Do not downplay that ECF forum.
And all of a sudden, and my ECF forum, thanks Don, but I've got to say, I see what's happening in Canberra and the leaders and politics and politicians. My lens on them is really limited because I'm just so busy. I mean, obviously I have an interest in it because I was in the craft, in the vocation, but my actual time, if you measure the time I focus on it, it's pretty minimal, and it kind of shocked me. So I'm then thinking of, the average mum and dad going about, taking their kids to soccer, running their small business.
Let's say it's one meeting.
Yeah, they'll just see a quick trailer, they'll see an ad, they'll see a billboard, and that forms their impression.
Yeah. And again,
does the candidate
you're
look
right,
okay?
100%. You're right, 100%.
Does that person look okay? Does that person look scary? Peter Dutton being, a scary guy, which is just pathetic because we're not voting for, Mr. Popular.
That's exactly right.
This might be a bit of a strong point to make, but I think it's an indictment on the Australian people that we're like that we don't actually necessarily think really long and hard about substance and policy. Who cares what Peter Dutton looks like or Anthony Albanese or whoever? What are the Greens offering me? What is Labor offering me? What is Liberals offering me? And what are they offering my country?
Yeah.
My world is geopolitics and national security. Neither party is really focusing on that as strongly as I believe they should. And I think that's, we'll pay a price. If not this generation, the next generation, if not that generation, the one after. We will pay a heavy price for our lack of focus on defence and national security.
Great point you just made.
Now.
If we focus just on the now and we're not focusing, and this is one thing I say to people, because I am very focal in this space, I'm trying to lend that strategic mindset and get people to think. That's my agenda, get people to think. And people go, oh yeah, see, you want low interest rates and you want this. I don't have a mortgage, stupid. So I'm not fighting the fight for me. My kid, but your kids, my kids have already got a property portfolio put aside for them. It's not even them. It's the generations that Michael's talking about. So, the biggest tip for me for listeners is to really, you don't have to have a massive interest, but have some sort of interest. And then when you do go and vote, it's not just about what suits you right now. It's what matters in 5 years, 10 years, 15 and 20.
But the problem is people can't think about 5-10 years because they're battling with cost of living and everything.
Well, then what you got to think of is what's going to lower cost of living, because it's not going to be the $5
Well,
there you go. It's not the 50-cent bus fare. It's not the $5 in 16 months or 12 months.
Yeah.
It's what can the government afford to give you in terms of cost relief?
Yeah. So before we close off today, and I can't wait to continue this conversation moving into.
I think we're going to have a part 2, right? Like there's a lot of things we didn't cover, but there's lots of good information that we got.
Yeah, I really want to dive into business, especially the small business that runs this country, policies that surround that. You talk about taxes and payroll tax, like there's a whole.
You could do one show just on taxes. Because there's taxes that people don't even.
Payroll tax.
Well, my staff, we make it very clear to let them know that we pay payroll tax, that we pay fringe benefits tax. So your $100,000 a year actually is $130,000 a year. What do you mean it's 130? Well, workers' compensation. So, forget super. I'm saying 100 grand with super is then plus 30%. Payroll tax, insurances, indemnity insurances too, because we've got to cover what they say to other people and what advice they give. So, so $100,000 a year is not $100,000 a year, it's 130. But we're very clear to show them this is how much you cost us because of the payroll tax to this, that, because they don't know what they don't know.
Well, I guess what I love about today, especially the two different views from a business point of view and then from a political landscape point of view and your experience there, Michael. I think this is awesome. I can't wait to continue this conversation. You guys are open for this in a couple of weeks from now.
Yeah, there's other things. There's other really things that doesn't make any sense. Like every time we have an election, business seem to shut down.
Yeah. Well, they get scared. They get conservative.
I would really love to sort of have I was having a chat.
And it costs about $400 million to have an election.
Correct.
So
that's it. And
no one knows that.
Yeah, there you go. I didn't know that. I knew it was a lot. I didn't know.
And so that's why I actually proposed a 4-year term, which over a period of time,
saves a lot of money.
Lots of $400 million.
Yeah. I only knew because I read something this week, and I was talking to you, and he said all of a sudden, like you run a small startup which is expanding rapidly, and people stop buying.
Yeah, the entire let's call it the SME mid-market space, everything went on hold 2 months ago.
Well, they're nervous. They're nervous. I mean, the disposable income's down. They're nervous. They're not strong. But like I said before, if you take the popularity out of it, you take the people out of it, and you're in small. There's micro, and then there's small, and then there's small, medium, and then there's medium. Right? It's not just SMEs anymore. There are micro businesses, 1 to 3 employees. Right? If you are a micro business or a small business, then there is a clear who you should vote for if that's your interest. Right? And that is, you've got your instant write-off going up to 30,000 from 20,000. You can write off in the first year. The Labor government's going to take it away. Right? They're going to drop it to 1,000.
Is that a fact?
That Liberal government's come out and said, we will not introduce any more IR or HR legislation reform or changes to micro and small businesses. Then that's another tick. Yep, there's the FBT policy that helps small business. No, it's not a booze tax because it doesn't include booze. It's not for the politicians because it doesn't include employees, and it's capped at a turnover of under 10 million, which is just small business, right? So that policy there is for small businesses to look after their staff, and that hopefully you look after it. You're helping a small business, and so there's another policy that's coming out from Peter Dutton. It said, take the popularity competition out, and if you're in the best interests of micro, small, and medium business, there is a clear person that we should be voting for. Now you have the democratic right to vote for whoever you like, but if you voted on just strategy and facts only, he'll get the SME votes.
But Phil, the other thing in an election campaign is actually communicating that message.
Correct.
Getting it out.
Which is what they don't do well.
They don't do well. And the conservative side of politics
think that politicians
have never really done that well. And probably the best one was John Howard and Tony Abbott, to his credit. He was great. Like 3 things. Stop the boats, no carbon tax, and whatever the third was. I can't remember. But you've got to communicate your message.
And that, I think we need to look at that next time we talk, right? The other thing is the foreign policy. We are looking at the leaders, but I think foreign policy is going to be really important over the next 4 years.
Well, the only comment I'm going to make on that, because we're going to run out of time, is that the strategy in play yesterday is not the strategy in play for the future, and that was we've been bipartisan with China and US. That's been our closest allies for different reasons. China for imports and a lot of tourism and education, and the US for relying on them for defense and export and all the rest of it. So we really have tried to ride 2 bicycles at the same time. And I called this about 10 years ago when I had a lot more to do. I sit on a lot more boards back then in local state government. And we were trying to ride two lawnmowers, and the 2 lawnmowers don't get along. That might have worked 10 years ago and 5 years ago, that China was our savior for tourism, for international students was a big one, and for importing a lot of products. So we've got to be nice and play nice with them. But the US is our defense safe net, and they take a lot of our exports. The future is not going to look like that. Sorry, the future is Australia has to stand on its own 2 feet. It has to stop saying, of course we can, but we've got to work towards it. And that's
Our defence budget is 2.5%.
Yeah, no,
and
there
it
you
should
go.
be 5%.
Correct. And the defence, they're building, even when they came out and they said, we're building these submarines. Look, I'm not an expert in warfare, but I'm a strategist, right? Our next threat is not going to be fixed by a submarine. The next threat is going to be cyber, or it's going to be like COVID, right? And I hope to God I'm wrong. That's one thing that I hope to God for many generations I'm wrong. Yeah. But the next is not, submarine's not going to solve the problem of what's coming in the future. Well, the submarine's not
going to come for another 25 years anyway.
So we're putting policy and strategy in play today.
That is going to be Scott Morrison.
Yeah, I know. That's going to be obsolete in 10 years' time. And that was another thing I didn't like about him, is that you're thinking about his policy, not him. You're thinking about today. That the war of 10 years, and I hope I'm wrong, and then there's no war. But the war of 10 years, mark my words, if there is one, is going to be cyber, or it's going to be a form of COVID. It's not going to be, and no submarines taking either of those ones out.
So that's my world. I sit on 2 defence company boards.
Well, there you go. It's your world. So
the only observation I'll make quickly, guys, is this: all the problems that we have now, all the challenges, all the issues, they didn't happen yesterday. They didn't happen last week. They happened a decade ago, or 15 years ago, or 2 decades ago. So the problems of 25 years' time, 50 years' time. Guess what's
so we have to have better foresight.
Right now.
We have to have better foresight.
If we happen to be in a conflict with a certain particular power in a certain part of North Asia, that is because of what's happening now, or what we're not doing now, e.g. investing in our defence capability. And so people say, cost of living, spot on. Cost of housing, spot on. Can't get houses, spot on.
That's right now problems.
But that didn't happen last week.
That's right. It's been a build-up.
Because of policies and ideas and politicians 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago that caused those problems today. And that's my big beef with politicians and the system. So that's why Phil should be Prime Minister.
No.
I think
that's not a good idea.
We should stop it there. We're going to have the Canadian election right before ours. So that's another really good precursor.
You guys, I'm happy to do a part 2 before the next election.
Absolutely. Thank you, man. So Michael Johnson, Philip Della, this has been amazing.
Thank you.
We're on the Mastering podcast here with Don Senka, and I can't wait to dive into this in a few weeks from now, just before the election. It's going to be absolutely epic.
It's been enlightening.
Thanks for having me.
To say the least.
Thanks for having us,
I've learned so much in such a short period of time, so hopefully the listeners will too.
Privilege, and vote 1, Michael Johnson.
I love it. Or at least go to one of the East Coast Forum events.
The message is clear, right?
Thanks, guys.
Hope you enjoyed this exciting episode of the Mastering Podcast. If you got value from today's conversation, hit that subscribe button now and share this episode with a friend. Until next time.